Okay, so today what we're going to talk about is just the concept of creating a sweeper. Um, Instead of just using a preset that you can download online, we're going to just make one from scratch. So in order to demonstrate this, I went ahead and put together a short little project on Machine that basically just goes from what feels like a bridge into a chorus. And this is one of the places that sweepers come in real handy, especially with pop music, in order to help drive and move the song along and build energy. So let's kind of listen to what's here first, and then I'll show you what I would do and the different options we have available. Okay, so that's actually pretty decent on its own. And once you put a vocal in here anyway, it will kind of naturally drive into the chorus just fine. But if we want to build that just a little bit more, I find doing this sort of thing is really useful. And first thing I'm going to do is just create an aux track, just a mono aux. I'm going to minimize Machine because we don't really need that right now. And we're going to rename this. It's going to be a noise. And I always mute this first because otherwise you can blast your headphones or your speakers depending on how you're listening. And we'll go over here to, I believe it's Other, and Signal Generator. So by default, it's going to be, turn that down. It's going to be on a sine wave, which we don't need, but we have a couple different options here. Square wave, sawtooth, triangle. None of those are really useful to us. It's more of something you would use when you're calibrating a system. So we're going to take a white noise, and also keep in mind, we also have pink noise if you're into that. Slightly different tonality, just depends on what you want out of it. I think I'm going to actually go with pink noise today. I like the way that sounds better. Now, there's a few ways you can handle this. I generally would prefer to print it first, because then it's just a little bit easier to work with. Let's make sure we have a good level here. Now, you're not going to want it too hot, because that's just going to be a bit much. Now, at max, I just want it barely touching the yellow. I'm actually going to turn that down a little bit. It'll make it a little bit easier to mix later if I keep the levels lower. So let's print a few bars. All right. Now I have that printed. The first thing we want to do is we're going to add an EQ on here. And I'm not going to actually put it first in the chain because sometimes I actually want to do some other things here that'll help drive it in different ways, which I'll show you later. So let's just start out with the Q10. You can use any stock Pro Tools EQ as well. Oh, come on. There we go. So first, we're just going to roll that all the way down. All right. Now, first trick I'm going to do is to automate this is we're going to go down here to frequency. I want to hit Control, Option, and then the Command key. This will bring up the Enable Automation. We want to select that. Now, we're going to come over to our track. And, well, first, let's shift this over here to our chorus. Now, we're going to select this, come down to Noise, and this will be our automation band for band 10. Now, to start off, let's just keep it simple. I generally want a more logarithmic approach than something that this is quite this linear in sound. So that ends up being a very simple noise sweeper on its own. Now, that's it's very simple, but it does the job. There's a number of ways you can make this more interesting, and the first thing I'm going to do is just also put a high-pass filter on here. There's no need to take up that much of our bandwidth. There we go. That much of our low end. That much of our low end with a noise sweeper. I mean, you probably don't need anything under 200. Just a little simple EQ on that. Now, another thing we can do here, let's make this a little bit wider, because right now it's just a mono track. Let's come in here and grab a delay, and we'll just take the simple mod delay that comes with Pro Tools. Now, you can do this a number of ways. You can keep it in time. You can just manually adjust this so there's a few milliseconds in between. We take sync off. The standard way, I'd often just do something like this, where it just widens the stereo width. It keeps one side on the left side is still 0% and unaffected, but the other side is delayed just a bit. And this will just keep your stereo image wider. me create a marker here to make this easier. Don't know why that there. See, just a little bit wider makes it a little easier to like hear and push through your mix. Now let's try some other options you have here. We can, one, delay this a little more. Let's put it as an eighth note. See, I don't like that when I do that because after the chorus hits, I just hear it still kind of sucking on the right. So let's just keep that a little shorter, around 20 milliseconds, just a little slapback. Now, let's push this in a few other ways and see what we can do. So let's try a distortion. Now this will be another way of affecting it. That'll help drive through your mix more. And let's just take something simple like sans amp. Now, if you have a direct sound in your head, you can just adjust these dials as you want. I often find it useful just to go through presets, select something randomly, and go with it and see how it feels. That adds a lot of grit. That really helps push it through your mix. There's a little bit of low-end muddiness I don't like in this. So we're going to dial it back just a bit. Let's try it again. Let's actually just go up here to make it faster. So that's a pretty good, feel there. Now you have some other options you can do. You can add all kinds of effects in here to do just about anything. Let's say it wasn't doing enough for you as it is. Let's add a flanger. It's kind of nice. Now, let's see what else we can do. One last option. I mean, you can go on for hours and try whatever you want. Let's say one last option. Let's I have two more things I want to show you. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to gate this with the kick, which will really just make it pulsate more and feel really even just more so in the groove. The Dyne 3 is actually my favorite compressor. If I'm going to gate like this, I just feel like it's super easy to key in and operate. And it sounds pretty smooth. It's relatively transparent. For something like this, you don't want a compressor that's adding tonality, at least, in my opinion. Now we'll come over to machine, and we're going to print one of these kicks so we can sidechain our sweeper with the kick. And I've already created a blank kick track prior, and what we're going to do is see if we can drag this over. I'm going to solo the kick. This is a great feature in Machine where you can just drag and drop a waveform from a loop you're working on. So since I soloed the kick, it should just be the kick drum. Hopefully that works out. I don't use this feature that much. Let's just do this from the top. And here I'm just hitting Command D to duplicate it. We don't need that many, but I often like to do that if I'm working on a pop track, because then I can, throughout the song, gate multiple things to the kick for different effects. Oop, wrong track. I'm just going to add a bus out. I always do this pre-fader. You could do this on the fader itself. But I just find I'm less likely to make mistakes in mixing and put the wrong track up if this is just being used as a trigger. So I usually go, so you can see easier, pre-fader send, put this at 0. Now we're going to go to over here to our compressor and sidechain that. So right here, if you look at this is just showing a little key, and what we're going to do is the key input will be bus 10. Now, every time the kick is played, the noise track will lower in volume. Well, theoretically. Oh, there. Missed the pre-fader. Sorry, things are going a little slow. I'm noticing with the screen record on it, my computer seems to be operating a little differently, so I'm going to have to look at this. Let's try this again. There we go. it's kind of a cool effect. One other thing I really like doing, especially if I'm doing that pulsating sort of feel, I'll pretty much always put a delay after that, and I love H delay. H delay is the best sounding delay I've found. Only trick is with this is I hate this analog button. It just adds noise in your mix, and it does sound cool, but once you have 60 tracks going and you have multiple plugins that have this analog effect on, it just makes it sound very, very noisy. So in every plugin that has this option, I just turn it off. I figure if I want a noise tape sound in my mix, I'll just record a tape machine making noise and put an extra track in my session. But start this off with a dotted eighth note or dotted quarter note. You always be careful if you use these depth and rate knobs on this plugin. I find that anything beyond just barely touching it very quickly gets extremely out of tune. So that's generally where I would push it. Let's see what happens if I go a little crazy with this, which is I almost never actually use anything like this because it just feels like too much to me. See right there, you can really start hearing how much the depth is modulating. Yeah, it kind of works as a noise track, but whenever you're dealing with something that has pitch, it can get way outside of where you really want it. That's the first thing that's kind of what I would generally do with the sweeper. You also have that same option of, you can do the opposite. A riser doesn't just have to go up. You can also duplicate this and go down with it. It's a little different effect, but it still drives. Let's mute the first one. We're going to come over here and kind of do the opposite of what we did the first time. Let's listen a little more in context. See, that on its own doesn't really work for me. Where it's more likely to be useful is either in a place like, actually, let's try it. In a breakdown bridge sort of down section, if you're coming out of a heavy chorus, this can be a good place for one. Oh, let me copy this one so I don't have to redo that EQ. that's one, like, kind of the basic idea. As I was playing, I thought of one other thing you can kind of do to screw with this and make it interesting. And I do this. I love this filter gate plugin. You can use this in tons of ways that, in order to make things drive differently than you maybe originally thought you could get out of what's in your mix. Now let's solo this track so it's easy to tell what's going on. So if you hear that, it's on 16th notes, which really kind of builds. It's kind of interesting. Let's hear that in the mix. It's an interesting sound, but it doesn't really work with the song, so I probably wouldn't go with that. Let's just go through some of these other presets and see if anything comes off on its own as usable. I actually really like that. That's something I will keep. So that's my demo video for today. That's a pretty good overview of how to create your own noise sweeper. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.